Okay, so welcome to the Node.js Community Build Workgroup for July 31st, 2018. We're going to be following our standard agenda. So starting out with, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share? I guess no announcements this week. Okay, so on to the issues tagged for the build agenda. So the first one is 1378, no use of PR code in live jobs. I think, Rifak, you had opened that one, right?
Yeah, so we discussed that on the last meeting. Where we got to was that since on the one hand, we want to grow the group and get a nice, the velocity and cadence of improvements. On the other hand, we want to provide a reliable and consistent platform for the entire Node project, that we might want to, formalize a little bit the way that we make changes to the configurations of the public CI. So I think that the conclusion was that we should start a conversation about it. I was tasked with jotting down some ideas that we can elaborate on, and that was where we finished.
Okay, so go ahead.
With this particular issue, I think we should just all agree that this is a good policy and this should be adopted. A couple of us have done it in the past. I've done it probably more than once, but it is not good when we have a non-trivial team size. So when there's more than a couple of people doing the work, then it makes it more manageable.
Yeah, I think one of the things we had kind of agreed to, at least the people who were in the last discussion, was that we should probably agree that that's the way to go, and that doing it other ways is like an exception case. There may be some reasons why, it's not always possible to follow the recommended approach, but this should be the recommended approach, and anything else treated as an exception that is broadly messaged and, hopefully doesn't happen all that often.
There is one caveat I want to give about this, which is that there's very often the case that updating Ansible, maybe this needs to change as well, but I will often update Ansible to reflect something that has been done on one of the live servers, particularly the web server or the Jenkins server. Like, we have to make a change, and so I'll make that change and then go and put a PR in to say this is what change was made. So it's almost the reverse of this. And maybe we need to say, well, that only should be done in cases where it's really important to make it happen. But
yeah, I guess the question is, you make a change to Ansible. The thing that the machine's already changed. So is there an urgency that says it can't just go through a PR and wait a few days for some reviews?
Yeah, I think that's probably the case, that on balance we should definitely get review before doing the changes. Often in these cases, though, I'll be doing it because I don't know yet what the config or the code would look like, because there's experimentation involved. For example, updating the metrics script, which I don't know if anyone's noticed. Actually, this is probably something worth saying in the meeting. Metrics are currently broken. We're getting a seg fault on awk, and I think it's probably to do with the size of the data. And I haven't had time to look at it, but that would be another case where I don't even know what the solution is until I tinker and then make it work. And then I would come back and put a PR to the repo to say, here's what has changed to make it work. That's a tricky thing.
I think that was one of the points that we got to in the last meeting, that at least in cases where we need to make an exception to the policy, that we make it well documented, so it's easy for other members of the team to follow up or trace. And on that note, there was a similar case 2 days ago. We started failing on Mac OS because of parallelism, and it was decided, ad hoc in the channel that we're going to move the build to one job and -J1 until we stabilized the build script. And that caused the jobs to be excessively long. So I enabled Ccache, which failed on 10.12. So this has all been a very iterative process and very noisy and frictious for the collaborators. So
let's look at the two big examples where this has been a problem. One of them is mine, where I implemented that version selector script, and then that was live in my branch on the repo for a considerable amount of time, and it was essentially using a PR in production, and that was bad practice. And then the other one was John, your use of the I think you had a branch, or maybe you were using a private repo for some stuff with the pipelines. But they're very similar cases in that we put not fully reviewed or agreed upon code into the hands of collaborators in a wholesale way, and we put them at risk because instability and other reasons. Those are the cases, I think, where it's easy, and because the biggest problem there is the fact that we don't have a small team. It's not just one person. If it was one person, it wouldn't matter. We've got multiple people. These things need to be a discussion. They need to have multiple eyes over them. And we also need to have an agreed on process so we're not stepping on each other's toes. So where there are multiple people, particularly that can review or are involved in that same activity, we should make sure we have a bottleneck process where it has to go through review.
Yeah, the interesting thing on those ones is that, like, for changes to jobs themselves, we don't actually have a way to review that at all, which is a bit of
that's one of the points of pipelines, though, isn't it?
Yeah, so that might make that significantly better, because like a number of these things, like the selector script, if we just pasted the code into the job itself, we wouldn't have had a way to review that any better. So, but I think, as the team grows, I'm certainly firmly on the side of we should do everything we can to follow the standard review process.
Well, here's another one, actually, that's a slightly different case. It's not because it's not code. So our collaborator CI is you currently have to authenticate to get access to it. Anonymous has been locked out. And I'd love to turn that off, but I don't know the provenance of that change and whether it dates back to our last security release or whether there was a good reason for it happening that I haven't seen the documentation for.
So that went through not a PR, but that was an issue because there was no document. There was nothing to change. The motivation was that this enables auto login, so collaborators don't need to hit the login button, and there was a huge, enjoyment in the community. But I didn't think about triggers, etc. But
there was an issue for it, though. That was a discussion.
Yeah, there was an issue. It was open for a while. There was +1s for it.
Yeah, well, that's why I didn't touch it, because I didn't know. I think it was.
Right. I guess it's and it's hard to find those, once an issue's closed, it's probably not easy to search find the right search criteria.
I mean, is there any way that we can create some form of Groovy script or something in Jenkins that periodically runs and checks to ensure that the jobs aren't using PR code? I mean, I would imagine I might not be saying this.
I have that script, but I don't think the team is not that big that it's going to be, as long as we accept that PR code can live in, test jobs. And once we want to promote something into, node test pull request and its subjobs, that we need some or PR, or at least some notification, some communication back to the team, so that when the next guy comes along, it will be easy, guy or girl, sorry, person. It would be easier to trace what happened, what changed, and how do you proceed.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my past experience, there were a few cases where, because some of the things we use are both in release and release and test, I wouldn't have been able to just have the PR land once without breaking either test or release. So, but I do 100% agree that we should just follow our goal is that everything we do through the PR process, if we can, through test jobs or whatever, do that. And then if not, I don't know if there's like some way we could tag issues to make them more visible.
Just having issues would be good. So, for instance, if I'm going to be working on the metric stuff, it's probably a good idea for me to open an issue to give visibility and say, look, we're aware that this thing is broken. I'm going to be working on it. If you see instability, this is why. And then it gets closed when it gets fixed.
Yeah.
So I think maybe the value here is in that we should highlight is visibility and transparency.
Yeah, and we have the project board, the action items. It has nice visibility for things that were just done and in progress, etc. For instance, yesterday evening, Richard from IBM wanted to update the node report job, and he asked, I have permissions, should I open an issue? I said, yeah, that would be a very nice, gesture. Just publish what you're doing. And eventually it turned into this cycle of back and forth, and it was very productive. So even issues, ad hoc issues to changes, improve the process.
So
I had added labels a while back, like CI public, CI release, CI job request, and that type of stuff, so we can keep track of like what changes are being made where. Like, I agree that the biggest thing is just like other people on the team knowing like what is occurring in all the different like spaces. And like we have the IRC chat and stuff, but I agree that like GitHub issues, like you can better go back and like search those like later on, as opposed to like a chat message.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff we need to document. So that we can all look at it and say, am I doing the right thing? Or I'm about to do this thing, or I want to do it. What is the process? What should I be tagging? Where should I be putting it? Like, these project boards, they're good in functionality, but they're hidden, and you got to have it open constantly, or you forget about it. So having these things written down would be good.
And I wonder if, like I'm just thinking, there's we have a fair number of issues in our repo as well. Like, would there be any use to having a tag that sort of marks these as sort of like we're changing something in the infrastructure, it's in term or whatever, and like so that you could just get that list more easily?
So the project board is classic for that. I'm trying to get it to that point. Exactly. We have a column for things that were reported from collaborators as breakage, and we have in progress, which are things that we are doing.
So how do
right
things get put into those columns?
It's when you open an issue or a PR, there is a project category near the labels, and you add it to action items. It gets moved automatically to the untriaged column. And when you click it, when you look at the board, you can, it's a classical agile board. You can move it from the untriaged either to incidents in progress, or we also have on the scroll right, we have things that were done. And another thing that's good in this is that things are sorted reverse chronological, so that you can see the latest thing that was done.
So this may be a dumb question, but is there a link on the README to the board?
I don't know, but on the top, you see project code issues, progress projects. Projects, action items.
Right. Okay. Because what would be nice is if there's a way to label them so they automatically get put into the right thing, so people don't have to like open the issue, tag them, and then move them, then go to the board and move them, right?
So if you open it as you just need, I need to think about what you said, but if you, when you open it, you tag it as action item, it gets pretty much to a good place.
Okay, now action item doesn't sound quite like, in this case, we're talking specifically about sort of changes in progress, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
we have the in progress column.
But in progress is anything in progress. I no, and I'm not saying this makes sense. I'm just saying,
you're saying specifically Jenkins public, CI public changes in progress.
It's sort of like infra change in progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
The kind of things, because some of these other things, it may be, oh yeah, there are issues there. You can go and read about them. They are a PR. It's like,
yeah,
those the regular PR process should cover. These are more like things are being changed. You can't see it anywhere else, but I'm putting what info I can into the issue, right? I don't know if that's useful for people to take it that way or not, though. So that's just a thought.
I'll think about it. We can talk about it offline. Another things that when we started using it, I was publishing it, I was pushing it for the collaborators to use as an indicator of open incidents. Like if they see something new broken in the CI, they could come here and see if it was reported already.
I think that's a good idea too.
It's a good goal, but I don't think GitHub boards have enough visibility, and it's just not the obvious place to go unless we have a huge banner at the top of the README or something.
Yeah, I think the README would, like, if you could actually hit the README and it would show you, like, here are the open incidents, that would be better, right?
And also links to some of our tools that we've got that, like, I didn't even know about the, what's the latest one I came across? The Node CI Health.
Yeah.
Thing. I didn't know about that one until this week. And the Build Monitor one as well. These things are all good resources, that the kind of thing that some of us would have open constantly. Links to these things, collecting them as part of our process would be great.
So I think specifically on this issue, 11378, the next step is to document the process and have that landed somewhere in the repo, right? Under process.
Yeah.
Do we have volunteers to write up the text?
I already volunteered right last time.
Okay. So I think we've had a pretty good discussion in terms of what we think that should look like. It's just a matter of writing it up. Is there any more questions or things people want to add to that? Okay, no. So maybe we'll move on to the next issue. The next one is...
I think we can take it off the agenda until it becomes, interesting again.
The only thing, the reason I would leave it on is I'd really like us to do it before the next meeting.
Okay. Sure.
So if it's complete, it'll drop off the agenda. Otherwise, it'll be a reminder that we need to do it. Because I think it's kind of, at least in my mind, it's something we should get done in the next couple of weeks. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Demo AWS Ansible Tower installation. George, are you okay to do that? Is that going to take a while? Should we put it at the end of the agenda, or what do you think's best?
Probably best, if we want to do it today, probably best to put it at the end of the agenda. I'm certainly happy to talk us through it. If we want to talk about that on this call, I don't know if people wanted to fork it off into a different call.
Okay, let's come back, loop back to see how much time we have at the end then.
Okay.
Request for elevated permissions, 1337. Just opening that one. So I don't think there's been too much discussion. I just see, John, your last comment saying that, we're slowly working through addressing that. I guess, is there a concrete next step that we've identified on that front?
You have to kind of still figure out what, like, along the lines, like with some other documentation stuff we're doing, like what criteria is for giving people the higher access. And that's kind of, it seemed to me at least that's where this got roadblocked. I'm not sure, Rod, if you want to jump in here. But that seemed to be where it got caught up, is that figuring out the criteria and like the trust factors.
So, well, I think actually
got caught up.
Joy's last comment was the interesting one, which was about trying to atomize the layers that we have, because the real problem is that we've lumped all of this very highly privileged stuff into one bucket and said, well, and it's become so critical that we just can't give that access very freely. But if we pulled that up, teased it apart a bit, then we could somehow see if we can withhold some certain secrets that don't even need to be shared, and other ones that are access to other resources. So infra is a really big banner right now, and if we can make it less big, then we should be able to have more gradients of access, and that could alleviate some of the concerns.
Yeah, and I that's kind of the approach I was hoping we could push along, is like, if we could figure out, what's the top thing that's causing people not to be able to push things forward, and look at that piece in isolation and say, okay, for that piece, is that something that we can break out from the larger group and give access to just that? Or is it something that we need to automate or whatever, and sort of work through the list that way? That's sort of along those lines, I think.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of this work is on me to at least describe it. And even as I'm thinking it through, everything's just so interlocking. And so maybe if I can describe that and the dependencies between them, then others can help think up creative ways to tease them apart. And then we can.
Like you had created like a separate key for the GitHub bot server. Like that was like a good thing also. Just like maybe each of those servers within there, like for the website server, that should have its own key to get root access. And then for like the CI server, that should have its own key, like that kind of thing, maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's the discussion we need to have. But, when you think about what that gives you access to, it's almost like many of these things will give you potentially access to everything. So, for example, if we give access to the web server, then there's a lot of secrets on that server that we've got to be careful to protect, like certificates and that kind of thing. If we give access to infrastructure providers, then that gives you potentially the ability to clone and see any root disk of any machine that we're running, which gives you access to everything. So these things have sort of these cascading dependencies that make them awkward. But if I describe that, then we can look at that objectively and say, well, maybe there are creative ways around it, or maybe some of these things just aren't that critical to protect. Maybe it's not as big a deal.
Yeah, I think that's why we like ran into this and why it's taking time to solve, is because it's complicated figuring out how to give it out. I agree.
So is it fair to say that the next action, Rod's volunteered to describe the different pieces as the starting point for looking at how to atomize?
I think so. I'll put them in my current list of to-dos and try and get to that ASAP.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other discussion or things on that before we move to the next issue? Okay, if not, the next issue tagged is self-nomination A. Miller, 1305. I think when I last looked at it, it was kind of a, hey, I know I've been busy, but we'll be back soon. Right, so Adam says, been remiss, unable to attend the last two meetings. We'll be sure to rearrange schedule to get more people involved. Read through most of the docs in the repo. So I think that one's just kind of waiting on Adam to connect with whoever was going to onboard him, right? Rich, I know you pinged in there. Is that a fair?
I wouldn't be the one to onboard him because I would be incompetent at that, but I will definitely take the action item of contacting Adam and finding out, when he might be available to attend one of these meetings, or if I can hook him up with someone else, that kind of thing.
So I'm just going to type into the issue itself, hey Miller, just let us know when you're ready to be on board. Is that fair?
It depends if we're all thumbs up on onboarding them, or if we want to get to know them better, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm thumbs up, but
yeah, I guess I am too. Certainly, through the interaction that he already has in ComCom and so forth. But yeah, good point. Does anybody want to wait a little bit before we do that?
That might be a good one to do in private, because it's a live meeting. Not that I don't have any objections to Adam. I keep on hearing from Tierney how he's how busy Adam is on the new website stuff. So
yep.
Thumbs up on that. I have another name as well that would like to get involved, but is looking for how to, and that's Lee Zaneski from DigitalOcean.
Okay.
Expressed an interest in becoming more active in infrastructure stuff. So I guess what's the process these days? Do I get him?
So we've been having people open issues and just self-nominating, okay. and then we figure it out from there.
Okay, I might point him to Adam's issue then and say, do this.
Yeah, unless this process is not working for anybody, because we did kind of start this relatively recently. So is this not working for anybody, or is this just fine?
I'd like to see, it's fine by me, but I'd like to, with the onboarding, I'd like to maybe see if we can do it as a team. Have at least 2 people doing onboarding. Because there's so much disparate knowledge through this group that it'd be good to have at least 2 people so that they can disagree if necessary.
It's a good point too, that it's hard for one person actually to cover all the different areas. So hooking the person up so they're comfortable reaching out to 2 people as opposed to 1 is definitely a good thing.
Like I had onboarded the last 2 people that were onboarded, which was Luca and Mateus, I believe. And like, that was fine. Like I guess that was okay, but obviously, and I had reached out to Adam and to Dan, who I believe is the next thing on the agenda. He's on paternity leave for the next couple of weeks still. But I mean, that was okay, me onboarding them by myself, but obviously if other people would like to help with that, that would be nice. Because I had just reached out to them over email, and I was the one that showed them how to like get into the machines and run Ansible and stuff.
So maybe when we're doing onboarding, just make it a public thing and say it's going to be happening. We're trying to arrange it for approximately this time, and then have multiple people jump in, because I'd be happy to jump in too if the time zone suited.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Daniel's already on the TSC, right? So maybe I'm getting confused. Anyway,
yes, Dan is already on. Yes, Dan is on the TSC.
That's what I thought. So yeah, I sometimes have a hard time mapping from people's names to the GitHub, but he's already on. So in terms of sort of trusting that he can come on to the build working group, I'm definitely sold on that already as well too.
And just with the onboarding process in general, I saw Rod, you had commented I needed to look at that, but I had opened a PR against the onboarding markdown document to add like a lot more stuff there. Also, just so that when we're onboarding people, we try and stay consistent with what we're giving them. So everyone has a good like foundation for how like things work. So.
Yep, I summed up that today. I imagine you probably merged it, or yeah.
Okay,
looks good to me.
Okay, so it sounds like 1305 and 1303 we're at least partially waiting on the 2 individuals just to be ready to take the next step, and we can regroup at the end if we want to have any other further discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, state of Ansible 1277. See, that is, so John, you opened that one. Is there anything particular you want to discuss this week?
It's just like a tracking issue of like how we're doing with migrating over from setup. And at this point now, we're doing good. We only have like I think it's 3 or 4 directories left. It's AIX, the website, and CentOS 5 are the only things that are left. So, because Yoao had submitted a pull request a couple weeks ago to move over Windows, which was a big thing. So I'm not sure if the IBM people can help with AIX, and I guess Rod with the website. I'm not sure with CentOS 5 what we're doing with that.
We're retiring CentOS 5, so just don't touch it. It's a nightmare. It's not even Ansible, Ansibleable at this stage.
From an AIX perspective, it is currently an ongoing thing. Ansibilizing AIX isn't necessarily the easiest thing, but there are people that are definitely working on getting a sort of community-ready playbook, hopefully in the next few weeks.
And we did get another machine from OSU that we can actually use to experiment, which is kind of part of that, which is good.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep that blank for the kind of final opening of the playbook. Yep. But we were both, when we requested it be re-imaged, I think we were quite pleasantly surprised at the turnaround time. So it's possible that we might be able to use that and then re-image it when we need it again. I'm not sure how you feel about that, Michael.
I think I'd bounce that off David Edelson, because it's basically when him and whoever it is he works with can squeeze in time to do that for us.
Okay.
So you might have hit him at a good time where he didn't have too much else going on, or it wasn't much work. I don't know which of the two. So I think asking him is probably the best bet on that front.
I'll have a chat with him. I'll CC him in the email.
Yeah, if he says sure, reimage it will, then we can. Otherwise, I think the other approach, like you said, which is doing most of the work on our internal machines and then using it for the final test, is a good way to go.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, anything more? I guess we just want to leave that on the agenda as a reminder, but anything else to discuss this week?
Just if there's any update, if one of the people with infra access could migrate over to the website server and just take a look at the scripts and make sure that they're up to date. But that's a pretty large task. That was something that was part of the request for more permissions, was that I was willing to go in there and get the website server set up with Ansible, or with the newer setup with Ansible.
I'm not so convinced that is a priority, since it's it's a singleton server. We can image it and restart it from image. We don't necessarily have to have an Ansible for it, since it is unique and so limited in our access.
It is Ansible. It's just not new Ansible. It doesn't measure.
Yeah.
It's not new Ansible directly. But to John's point, it's the answer. There's no guarantees that the Ansible actually either works or is up to date. And I just, like with my last PR for the website, I discovered that the libuv nginx config was out of sync in the Ansible compared to what's live. And normally I'm pretty rigorous about that. I don't know how that one got out of sync, but those kinds of issues. And it's, yeah. This is the thing about the website. It's so complex, that server. And what I would really like is for us to re-architect the infrastructure around the website, because it just seems like we've lumped in too much complexity into that one resource. And maybe that is the ideal task, rather than let's keep on patching this old thing.
Yes, to pull pieces out.
Yeah.
And I think that, as you said, making it transparent, or at least in sync, the scripts that we do have be in sync with what's running. Since I remember several times that people were asking questions about how the website is set up, and I refer them to the scripts.
Yeah, I mean, normally they are in sync. Normally it goes, if somebody wants an update, then it goes into the repo first and then gets pushed off the server. That's normally the flow. But
So from my point of view, that's a high priority than, refactoring just for the sake of refactoring. So yeah, if we can, break off the actual website to one server and the download to different or whatever, this is a part, some of the logic that's there, especially now that the front end is getting redesigned. So I'm assuming up to a certain level, it's going to be independent, and we can run it off a different server, etc.
And this is where DigitalOcean might come in handy. So this, as I mentioned, Eddie Zaneski, who's the community manager for DigitalOcean, I had a great chat with them. Well, a few of us had a great chat with him at Node Summit. They've got re-engaged with us, and they're very supportive. They're very interested in what we're doing for Node, and very interested in also being able to use that as a marketing point, which is great. But he's actually interested in getting involved, and he was talking about some of the new stuff that's coming down the pipeline at DigitalOcean. So there might be an opportunity here to pull in somebody like him to essentially reimagine what we're doing on the back end, to make it more resilient, to make it less, everything critical on one server kind of thing. Anyway, this is a discussion for future. I don't think we need to take up too much time with it here.
But yeah, I'd echo the original comment that, because of the complexity, I'm not sure it's the top priority to get the Ansible run there. It's more, how do we make the situation better? So what would be, is there a concrete next step we should try and call out in terms of that? Or is it just we've got other higher priority things we're going to work on first?
Off the top of my head is, make plan for the new website to be independent of the old website, maybe run off a droplet or whatever. That's like a classical opportunity. They're developing the new website. So instead of bringing it into this monolith, running it as a separate.
Okay, that actually seems like a good first step as it gets us down the path and lines up with other work that's going on in the project.
Yeah, we could even do things like just use Nginx internal proxy module to proxy various paths like the dist/download directory off to the old server and do it piece by piece. That's possible. I was also going to say that from the previous issue that we discussed about permissions, I think that one's connected, because when I outline all of these pieces of the puzzle, it should become obvious all of these things that are part of our website monolith, essentially. All of the pieces of that puzzle.
Okay.
Can anyone confirm for me what the difference is between the www and the create web host.yaml file in the new layout? Are they the same thing, or is that a work in progress in the create web host.yaml?
That's a work in progress. That's someone tried to port over just like the website configuration for Nginx for the web host, and that was all it ported over. So yeah, so the source of truth right now for the website is setup/www. That's the one you would want to use.
Right, okay.
And also, while we're moving towards like Ansible Tower and stuff, having better Ansible scripts for the website is like part of that whole package too.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, so it kind of sounds like we've got some concrete next steps, probably driven by some of the other things. And like when the outline for 1337 comes, that's probably our trigger to take a closer look and see if there's anything we should push on 1277 itself.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, anything before we move on to the next issue? Okay, the next one is 1226, use of Docker in Build CI. And I guess this one was Rod. It basically says Rod to take us through a walkthrough on what we have in CI and already using Docker. Now, I suspect we may need to prepare for that in advance, and we only have 16 minutes, but up to you, Rod.
I could do it, yeah. No, actually, I won't do it because there's a few moving pieces. Let me prep for that one. Yeah, sorry, if I had realized I would have prepped, but let me prep for next meeting. And it's not very complicated, but I'll step through so that people are aware.
Sounds good. Okay. Next one then is dropping 32-bit builds 885. Just opening that up to see.
I think the summary was that the biggest problem is CentOS 5 and Node 8, that we have to keep the 32-bit machines while Node 8 is alive, and we were waiting for Rod to say that that makes sense. So we want to retire the 32-bit Linux machines. The question is when.
For release or test or both?
Both. Well, especially test.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, but we're still supporting 32-bit builds if you do it yourself out of Node Core. So it's something we still need to test. Or have we dropped support for it entirely?
But yeah, it moved to experimental.
Oh. Okay.
For Node 10 forward.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, all we need to do then is use the version selector script and exclude 32-bit machines from test for everything beyond Node 8. If that's never redone.
That's almost there. We have one Debian machine, and I have a PR open for that. But the question is, can we retire the machines?
No.
No, right.
Because we've still got to produce them for Node 8. Like that hubbub about you're dropping 32-bit builds, I need them for my thing. We can still tell people right now, well, you can download Node 8. Node 8's still good. It's not even in maintenance. It's LTS. Go get Node 8.
Yeah, you've got a year and a half left on that.
Yeah, so maintaining that story would be nice, at least.
So I say, probably if you write this out, we'll retire the machines once Node 8 and close that issue, and I think we're done.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I can actually type that in right now if that helps. Discussed in last meeting. Agreement was to leave machines in place until 8.x goes EOL. I'm going to close this issue. Closing. So that's what I said. Discussed in last build working group meeting. Agreement was to leave machines in place until 8.x goes EOL. Closing this issue. Please reopen if you disagree. Anything else?
Actually, here's a here's a problem, and it's the same problem with CentOS 5. Because we've still got CentOS 5 in CI, which is we don't really need it in there for Node, but libuv uses it, and libuv uses 32-bit. So while we're retiring things, we should be checking with libuv to make sure that those guys are not going to be upset that they don't have 32-bit machines to test on.
I can take it there.
Keep on forgetting about them, and that's not very nice.
Okay, so was brought up that we should check with team as well.
While you're doing that, Raphael, you might want to say that we are going to retire CentOS 5. We're going to pull that out of their mix because it's EOL by a long way, and we can't continue to support it.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get any pushback on that. The nice thing about libuv is that the team is tight knit and the community is sort of quiet. So, or at least
so we can abuse them and they won't complain.
You could the way you could put it is maybe the maintainers represent the community well and. We'll probably have the right answer.
Yeah, that's the right way to describe that.
Okay, so I updated to just say that basically we'll leave that issue open until Raphael reaches out to the WV team and reports back in the issue. I think though we can remove the issue itself from the agenda. Does that make sense? And then if there's something unexpected in terms of the discussion, we can bring it back on. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Steps and then remove. Okay, the next issue is now the demo AWS Ansible Tower installation. So I don't know, Gibson, if we've given you enough time. 10 minutes is left.
Hello, I'm George.
Sorry, George. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, shall I just do a very sort of brief, sort of 5-minute walkthrough, and then if we feel that we want to talk about it more, we can do another meeting. Is that okay with everyone?
Yep.
Yeah, works for me.
Cool. Okay. I'll let me just share my screen. I'm hoping everyone can see this.
Yep.
Can everyone see my screen? Cool. Yep. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to demo this with the Adopt JDK Ansible Tower that I've got running, just because it's kind of set up and it's got some jobs populated. There's not a huge amount to obviously demonstrate. One of the key things is that we can use GitHub team and org mapping, which is what we're using at Adopt. So again, it ties in quite nicely with the infra teams that we're using at Node, because it allows us to obviously map those teams through and provide different levels of access. Internally, so you have a dashboard that you're presented with, which is this. It shows kind of your recent jobs that ran. If I go through, you basically kind of have an organization level, which in this case, I suppose would be called Node. And inside that, you can create teams and inventories. So you can assign different teams, different access levels. So I think we discussed the option of having perhaps a team that any sort of collaborator could access, that could then go in and run playbooks that might go and check for duff processes and remove them. I can show you the inventories quickly. So we've got the same system as we do in the build work group of using an inventory YAML file. So this is really nice because we can configure this to essentially go through and constantly update those jobs, and it will add all of the variables and everything already for us, which kind of works quite nicely. As you can see, it's all set up there. And then basically all you have left is projects, which then, sorry, not projects, templates, which is then essentially, and again, it can be pulled from GitHub. It's just any of the playbooks that you have in the folder structure. And then it's really easy. It's just a case of basically going through, let's say I wanted to go and run our API job. You can go through, not there, sorry, you click through, and you just simply click rebuild. And in a second, hopefully, you get a console that runs through. So I mean, yeah, as I said, it's really simple to use, and obviously, hopefully, it encourages people to come in and work on running the playbooks better. And I can confirm, obviously, from what I've said, that this will work with the current sort of structure that we have at Node. I know I was worried before about the fact that obviously we were using dynamic inventories and stuff, but I've managed to, in the pull request that I submit, basically get everything working with Tower now. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. That's been a very, very quick run through, and if people want to see more, I can show them buttons if they're curious.
So the other, when you showed clicking the rocket, that's just like how you kick off a job, right?
Correct. Yeah. So you have your primary host, which hosts Ansible. And then, so we have a whole host of secrets that are stored on that, whereas obviously at Node, we have the secrets repo. But we can dynamically pull those secrets into Ansible Tower. That all works fine. The other really nice thing about Ansible Tower is that you get quite a nice CLI tool. So in the playbook, I've essentially been able to get it to a point where we can completely redeploy Ansible Tower with all the playbooks, all the inventory set up, all the configuration kind of ready to go out the box, which is kind of really nice. There's literally no buttons to press, which makes obviously redeploying really, really simple.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, say we wanted to have somewhere any collaborator could log into, and then it would be like clean up machine or something that would do the things like clean up the processes or wipe workspaces or whatever the normal, kind of restart the agent, the kind of things that we find periodically need to have happened.
Yeah, so the way I view it is that we would have multiple teams long term. We'd probably have a sort of an infra team, well, maybe even a few more. We'd have an infra team, release team, test team, and then perhaps a sort of collaborator or more org-wide team. And they'd obviously all be dynamically mapped through your GitHub ID. And that would mean that you could, as a collaborator, let's say, you could go in and run that playbook that checks for processes and cleans them up on a machine. Or check a workspace, clean that up, and then obviously we can slowly introduce higher levels of administration as we sort of please. I know the idea was with the Node one to initially kind of just start with that low level of access for collaborators, and then slowly look to porting across some of the higher access scripts as well.
I was just getting at how simple can we make a screen? Like somebody logs in, there's a lot of buttons and things. I'm just wondering if, like, how simple can we make it look so you basically see, okay, I just want to press this button.
I mean, you can make it so that when you log in, you go straight to a template, or you can, obviously, when they log in, normally they'd have the inventory here. And I mean, so we could just have a playbook sitting down in the templates bit, and you could just click launch like that, add the machine that you wish to run it on, and then essentially just go for it. I mean, I don't know. You tell me how simple this is. I mean, this is good feedback. I would argue it's a lot simpler than it currently is.
But I'd almost like.
Secret?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering about secrets because I presume the secrets are kept on the machine, and you don't as a user of this thing, you don't have to have any access to those secrets, so that we can, because one of the biggest problems we have with Ansible right now is that we have all these secrets floating around amongst us, and we just assume each other has the right ones, and we're going to go asking each other, do you have this one, and can we keep them in sync? I like the idea of having them all in just a single place, as long as we can keep the really important things genuinely secret. And
so you can lock down a secret to a specific team. So you could say, I only want this secrets file to be available to people in the team. So we can all the collaborators have, essentially, if they were to ever try and use one of the secret variables, it would return undefined. They've run tests on that.
Is there a way they can use them without seeing them, though? Like, for instance, even just the Jenkins node secret.
Yes, they can run the job without ever doing that. They wouldn't need to know it. It would just run.
Okay,
as long as we ensure that we don't log it, of course, in the playbook.
Right. Because I think that, and then the what was the other tool you looked at? The Keybox.
The SSH thing, yeah.
Yeah, I think these two together could help us, significantly in managing all those things.
Yeah, I mean, the Node Ansible Tower is actually running. The PR's in. I know we've just had a long talk about running a PR code in production. I have got it running. Obviously, there's a few other bits of DNS stuff that I wanted to tweak at some point, but we could certainly start adding some jobs to that instance and have a little play around and see what we feel before opening it up to a wider org level access. At the moment, only people that are in Node Build can log in, and obviously there's nothing in it, so it's not really anything to hide.
Yeah,
I'd love to do this. What's the pull request number for that originally?
I can pull it up. I think there was one pending change that I needed to add. Let me just double check that one. It is 1390, and I believe, yeah, there we go. So I just need to make a tweak to make the exception in the main create playbook. So as long as we're all kind of happy with that, then we can. I'll make that change, and then we can get it merged. The only thing I was hoping that you could perhaps do, Rod, was just set up the DNS to point to maybe ansible.nodejs.org or something. I'm not sure.
I'll do that now for you. Yep. The next steps for us getting involved, do we just go to that thing and log in, and do you need to give us permission? I'd love to tinker with this just to see what the potential is, because it sounds really useful.
I can certainly check. Once we've merged the PR, the inventory will start working. So at the moment, the inventory doesn't.
Of course.
So I've had to make a tweak to the Python script. It's to do with the way that Ansible Tower reads the Ansible inventory.yaml file. It's essentially to do with directory issues. So I've managed to fix that. So once we merge that, the inventory will start populating, and then you'll be able to essentially go in and pick up one of the playbooks. It kind of dynamically pulls them in. And then, yeah, you could literally go ahead and start running anything you really like.
So it references our GitHub. So it's all done through GitHub?
That is correct. So the projects here represent, sorry, I've got a screen in my way. Here we go. So the project represents the GitHub repo. So you can see here I've added the adopted PK SCM URL. And so what it then does is it means that it's able to dynamically pull in all of the Ansible YAML files. So you can essentially then just say, I want to use this playbook, and you can create it a name in your template, and then it's literally kind of click and go.
Cool.
I guess initially we'd want to create some new ones to do like the kind of machine cleanup we were talking about, right?
That would make sense.
I mean, I'd like to use this just for, like, I'd like to get rid of the secrets off my machine. Like, I'd like to get rid of host vars. If this lets us get rid of host vars, that's awesome. Because we did come across that problem where that was out of sync for a while, and so a couple of machines got the wrong secrets put on them for Jenkins, and then when they restarted, that was So
I don't think that's even completely populated, though, is it?
No, but we all have our own. I've got a pretty comprehensive host vars directory.
Okay, so we could check them in. I mean, I basically created those one by one whenever I needed to reimage a machine, which is kind of painful. I wasn't sure. I assume we didn't want to check them in just because of the secrets, but
no, we don't want to check them in. But I assume that this process lets us put them in there as secrets outside of the repo.
Luca has a PR for a plugin that will pull the secrets from the secrets repository on the fly, and
that's what I was just going to bring up.
Destroy them.
We could stick the GPG key on the Ansible Tower and then pull out those secrets on the fly if we prefer using that system.
Okay, well, that's nice. One place. That's a good place.
My only concern with putting it directly onto Ansible Tower is it therefore means that our secrets wouldn't be SCM managed, which could be a tad concerning. I do like the way that we currently store them, but I agree that having a host vars directory on your local laptop is really painful.
Especially when you're managing those large number of pies, right?
Yes. But by all means, Rod, I mean, it's possibly worth us trying to put together kind of more of an introductory call where we could have perhaps talk through and have a bit of a couple of hours of crunching through and seeing what we can actually get done on Ansible Tower rather than me demoing it. I'm not sure how you feel about
that. I don't mind either way. I'd love to just play just to learn about it, but I guess if we get that merged and then give everyone in Build Working Group access to it, then we can start populating with things and see what turns out to be helpful. But if we set the end goal that we shouldn't. It should be a rare situation where we run Ansible manually. If we set that as the end goal, and it seems like we'd all work towards getting there. That does seem like a good goal. I think that's legit, isn't it?
I think that, and the goal of letting collaborators self-help. So those would be my two ones, right? One is just like, make our lives easier in terms of the build working group not having to worry about things, but also enabling a new group of people to do things to fix common problems, that kind of stuff. I think
there's also actually a third thing there, and that's to ensure that what we have in Ansible playbooks is what we have on the machines. Because I've seen so many cases of machines that simply don't match what the Ansible playbook contains. And I think we want to get to a point where we're running those playbooks really regularly so that we know that they're working, but also that the machines have what that playbook believes they should have.
Yeah, so getting to the point where like they run automatically every night.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, those three goals seem like a good thing. I just think they're all slightly different, so it's probably good to have those three as things we're working towards in the end.
Okay, so that DNS entry is working now, and I have 153 files in my host vars directory, so that's what I'd like to get rid of.
Okay, we are at
really quickly, Michael, just really quick. With the Fixit playbook, I have a branch locally which will kill the hanging processes and that stuff. I've been meaning to open up a PR for it, but there is a playbook out there that I've been working on to do these common tasks.
Okay, that'd be great.
Fall and stuff. Just in case people were going to start working on it, I already have a work in progress thing.
Okay, so that could be our first candidate. Once we get a bit more comfortable ourselves, that might be our first candidate for making available more broadly.
Yeah, to the other collaborators and stuff.
Yeah,
I agree.
Okay, so we're 6 minutes after. Are there, George, do you want add anything on that before we moved on?
No. I think I kind of know what we're doing. I'll get the PR ready to merge, and then, as Rod said, I'll make sure that everyone in the build work group has access to Tower. And then I guess, we can basically, the way I've built the playbook, we can almost kind of play with it until it breaks and redeploy it. So I wouldn't particularly worry about people just going and having a play and seeing what they think.
Sounds good. Okay, so I guess any other issues that we should discuss before we close out for today? Okay, I guess not. In terms of question and answer, usually we go out to YouTube. I don't know if anybody has the link open. I think I may have closed that.
I can check.
Yeah, if you can do a quick check to see if there's any questions. If anybody who's listening, please enter your questions. We'll give you 30 seconds to get them in there.
I'm not seeing anything.
Okay, great. So thanks everybody for coming today. And I'll stop the stream.